Hello and welcome. Today, we're getting into a really big question. Who gets to decide what's allowed on our public airwaves? We are diving deep into the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, and its most powerful, and you guessed it, most controversial authority over the media we all watch and listen to.
I mean, really think about that for a second. What if the government could just pull the plug on a news network because it didn't like what they were saying? I know it sounds pretty extreme, but that exact possibility is right at the heart of the debate we're digging into today.
And that's because the FCC technically has the power to revoke a broadcaster's license to even operate. Now, it's a power they haven't actually used over content in decades, but the fight over whether they should be able to, well, that's more heated right now than ever before.
So to really get what this is all about, we have to go back and see how we even got here. Let's unpack the legal and historical groundwork for the FCC's power.
You know, the groundwork for this whole thing was laid over many years. It all kicks off in 1934 when the FCC is first created. For a while, its power just kept growing. In 1969, the Supreme Court actually backed its authority to regulate content. But then the pendulum swung back. By 1987, the FCC got rid of its own fairness doctrine because it was worried it was creating a chilling effect on free speech. This constant back and forth is exactly why this is such a fierce debate today.
Okay, so here is the absolute key to this whole thing, this idea of the public interest. The law basically says that because the airwaves belong to all of us, the public, broadcasters get the privilege, not the right to use them. And the condition is that they have to serve the community. But what serving the public interest actually means, well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
And this is where it gets really tricky, because the conflict is baked right into the original law. The Communications Act basically tells the FCC to do two opposite things: regulate for the public good, but, and this is a big but, do not censor content. It's supposed to be a referee, not the speech police. This one paradox is what fuels the entire controversy.
All right, let's break down the first side of this argument, the case for using this power to hold broadcasters accountable. For people on this side, this isn't about control. It's about being good stewards of a public resource. They argue that since the airwaves belong to everyone, there has to be some way to make sure they aren't used to hurt the public, whether that's through dangerous misinformation or other kinds of misconduct. They see the power to revoke a license as the ultimate necessary safety net.
And this quote really captures their thinking perfectly. The idea isn't to swing this power around like a blunt instrument. It's meant to be a calibrated tool, a last resort, really, to maintain a basic level of quality and trust in our broadcast media.
So, does the threat actually work? Well, supporters say, yeah, absolutely, and they point to history. Back in the 80s, when the FCC started cracking down on indecency violations, complaints dropped by a whopping 30%. For them, that's pretty clear proof that just the threat of losing your license is a very powerful deterrent. And this isn't just some dusty old debate. Advocates for stronger FCC power look at things happening right now, like the spread of false claims about elections, and say, see? This is exactly why we need this. They argue that without a real consequence, there's not much stopping harmful ideas from taking over the airwaves. But of course, there's a very powerful counter-argument, one that looks at this exact same power and sees a direct threat to the First Amendment. From this point of view, taking away a license because of what was said isn't regulation, it's censorship, full stop. The big fear is that this power is basically a political weapon just waiting to be used. Whichever party is in charge could use it to scare or shut down news outlets that criticize them, and that creates a climate of fear that hurts everyone.
And this gets to the core of it, right? The idea here is that a democracy just can't work if the press is afraid to speak truth to power. The second a news organization starts worrying that an unpopular story could get their license pulled, the whole principle of a free press starts to fall apart.
And that leads us to this really critical idea called the chilling effect. This isn't about the government actually censoring anyone. It's about the fear of it. The theory is that if broadcasters are scared of retaliation, they'll start censoring themselves. They'll just avoid controversial topics, they'll pull back on tough investigations, and as a result, the public conversation gets a whole lot less informed.
Critics are quick to point out that this isn't just some abstract theory. They point to real examples, from the Nixon administration literally leaning on the FCC to punish its media critics back in the 70s, to much more recent calls in 2017 to investigate networks for their coverage. This shows that the fear of this power being used as a political weapon isn't hypothetical at all. It has happened.
So what we have are two fundamentally opposed views. One sees the FCC as a necessary regulator, keeping things in check, and the other sees it as a potential government censor.
So this really is the central dilemma. On one hand, you see the FCC as a public interest regulator, an agency whose job is to uphold standards and protect the airwaves from harm. But on the other hand, you see the potential for a political censor, a government body that could be used to silence dissent and undermine the First Amendment. It's a fundamental clash over what the FCC is even for.
And the stakes here aren't just philosophical, they're huge, economically speaking. We're talking about an industry that brought in $38 billion in ad revenue last year alone. Any challenge to a license, even an unsuccessful one, creates massive uncertainty in this market. And that instability can impact everything from local jobs to huge investments.
And let's not forget the human side of this. Over 90% of Americans still rely on broadcast TV and radio for their news. For a lot of people, especially in rural areas, that local station is their main line to vital information, everything from storm warnings to what's happening in their community. Messing with that has a real human cost.
So, where do we go from here? Well, the two sides point in completely opposite directions. One path is to strengthen the FCC's authority, give it clearer, faster tools to fight misinformation. The other path is to protect against overreach, to build legal firewalls that outright ban content-based revocations and prevent the system from ever being used as a political tool.
And all this brings us to the core challenge that's really going to define the future of broadcasting in this country.
At the end of the day, it's all about finding a balance. How do we make sure broadcasters are accountable to the public without accidentally creating a system that suffocates the independent and, yes, sometimes critical press that's so vital for a healthy democracy? There's just no easy answer here. It's a question that really forces us to weigh two core American values against each other. And figuring out how to strike that right balance between accountability and freedom isn't just another policy debate. It's one of the defining challenges for our information age. Thanks for watching.